Okay, now we got that taken care of. Welcome to our Community Church Unitarian Universalist. I'm your worship associate, Sally Jackson. It is a joy to be with you, in person and virtually. So who are we at Community Church? We are a progressive, open-minded, and inclusive religious community. That's as close as it comes to me. We welcome all who are on a spiritual search for truth and meaning. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of social justice and elevate compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every being. Please look to your weekly email for announcements. Before we move on to the chalice lighting, I'm going to do a quick introduction for our speaker. Most of us know him rather well. This is Reverend Jim VanderWeele, who was our minister through the most trying times of the church. That was Hurricane Katrina, and he's partially responsible for us having this lovely building now. He was in charge of making sure that it would fulfill what we needed. And I wanted to just mention one thing that I really miss about him not being our minister anymore, and that was when he would call for the offering, because he always had a joke for us. And I remembered one of those the other day, and I'm going to share it with everybody because I think it's appropriate for any day. He said a man was on his way to church, and he was walking down the street, and he saw a little boy sitting there with a box of puppies. It said, "Free Methodist puppies." And the fellow thought that was a little strange, Methodist puppies. And a week or so later, he's walking down the street, he sees the same kid out there with a box of the little puppies that said, "Free Unitarian Universalist puppies." He had to go across the street and find out what this was about, and he said, "Why are these Unitarian?" He says, "Oh, their eyes are open now." And that's why I always love seeing Reverend Jim here. Okay, well, it is now time for us to do our chalice lighting. It's our custom to light a chalice, invoking hope, the spirit of hope and eternal truth to our worship. Please join in the singing with "We Light This Flame." We have our invocation is called Marginal Wisdom by Leslie Takahashi. They teach us to read in black and white. Truth is this, the rest is false. You are whole or broken. Who you love is acceptable or not. Life tells its truth in many hues. We are taught to think in either or, to believe the teachings of Jesus or Buddha, to believe in human potential or a power beyond a single will. I am broken or I am powerful. Life embraces multiple truths, speaking of both and of and. We are taught to see in absolutes, good versus evil, male versus female, old versus young, gay versus straight. Let us see the fractions, the spectrum, the margins. Let us open our hearts to the complexity of our worlds. Let us make our lives sanctuaries to nurture our many identities. The day is coming when all will know that the rainbow world is more gorgeous than the monochrome. that a river of identities can ebb and flow over the static, stubborn rocks in its course, that the margins hold the center. Is Cynthia here? Because we're supposed to have our time for all ages, and it's got down that Cynthia's doing it. And I don't have a time for all ages, do you? Okay. You have, oh, this is our Reverend Jim, always here.
Let me just say it's really good to be here. I don't mind Zoom meetings. I go to a lot of Zoom meetings. I do not like preparing a message and having it shared, which I've done for a couple of times here for Community Church, Unitarian, Universalist. It's a difficult thing to do, and it just never seems to turn out right, so it's good to be in your presence and here today. A few things are a little bit different than what we had figured that they would be today. But I just have a story to tell you about a time when my entire family went out and we were in a state forest, and they had a little fire pit, and we were going to start a fire, and it had rained, and all of the wood was wet. The wood didn't have any ability to combust. It whimpered. There was some whimpering wood out there, and we came back about 2 months later, and it had been dry. And we built what we thought would be a fire, and it was not a fire, it was a blaze. Because the wood caught just like that, and it was effective. It made a fire immediately. That's not much of a story, but it's a little bit of a story, and I think it speaks a bit to the difference it makes for those who are prepared for what they have to do and those who are maybe not quite settled and ready to blaze, ready to catch fire, ready to go. So I'm going to leave you with that as our words for all ages. And I don't think that we're dismissing anybody for religious education then today either. So it's good to see everybody here. I really love seeing younger people in a church service. I think it's great, and honor you parents for taking on the task of bringing your children on Sunday morning. It's something I did when I was younger, and I think it's tremendous for the church here to be able to generate a spirit of inclusivity, of bringing the young people in to your services. I'm going to go to Harvest the Power One. Some of the music is going to be changed a little bit from the order of service. Just note that. I'm going right into Harvest the Power, first section. Today's opening reading by Reverend Leslie Takahashi begins with this. They teach us to read in black and white. Truth is this, the rest false. You are whole or broken. Who you love is acceptable or not. Life tells its truths in many hues. Let's think about that. Our many hues. Our congregational hues, our world and life hues. You entered your life in your hue, your location, your parent or parents, your setting, and the approach to life taken by those who were raising you as you were a younger person. I had mine, and in my hue, there was a heavy centering on faith. You from your hues, me from mine, arrive in this place today. Faiths, you know, hold power over their followers. Around our globe, people are linked to their faith tradition, some by dogmas, some by its ethos or approach to life, and some because faiths are like co-ops. Its members help each other, especially in times of need. Some stay because familial ties seem to lock them in place. And me, I wanted to leave that old-time religion. You know that one? Give me that old-time religion. But it took several attempts to gain my freedom. Japanese author Yasunori Kawabata said, "Time flows in the same way for all human beings. Every human being flows through time in a different way." You stepped into life in your shoes, I in mine, and I have a bit more of that to share today. As an aside for a moment, some of you have heard a bit of this before, but this is not my story or my hues that are important here. It is only that it figures into the arc of life for me. The arc of life that eventually brought us together, many of us here, all of us here, particularly today. My father was a Christian school principal. My mother, my lovely mother, was a stay-at-home mom. In my early years, church service was held twice on Sunday, catechism classes on Wednesday night, prayer and Bible reading occurred at every meal. And there were more thou shalt nots than love one another's. The oldest in my family, I was asked to be a good example for the younger kids. The principal's kid, I was to avoid dishonoring my father's family. Note the patriarchy here, but that was the way it was. Fortunately, it helped me learn to address issues of patriarchy, a struggle I still have. It's still there, but I observed. Some students also, who were sent to the principal's office, took out their frustrations on me. Yet one of the joys of my young life was that my father encouraged me to read. He said extensive reading could serve me well. And by the time I reached the 8th grade, I moved from books on Native Americans, history, and junior high chicanery to tomes composed by Descartes, Voltaire, and Locke, philosophers of life who offer ingenious perspectives on existence, reason, values, and faith, too. You see, my frustrations with my faith did not prompt me to turn away from faith. They led to a curiosity about other faiths. And that's happened, I think, because I had sought consistency in my faith, a sense of right and righteousness, and was disappointed with what I had been observing. And that led me, midlife, to consider the Spirit bubbling up within me and harvesting its power. And I turned myself toward ministry. I'll share more on this in a few moments, but now it's time for the offering, and I do not have a joke.
either because I used his earlier. Okay. Remind everybody that Community Church Unitarian Universalist is a self-sustaining congregation. Members' and friends' generosity help us to do the sacred work of bringing justice, spirituality, and compassion to our community and beyond. You can give online at ccunola.org/stewardship or by text at 504-370-2659, text GIVE. You can also send a check to CCUU at 6690 Fleur-de-Lis Drive, New Orleans, Louisiana 70124. And you can give in person. Please come forward during our musical offertory. If you are unable to come forward, raise your hand and we'll come to you. Thank you.
Yeah, 59, all the creatures renewed in blue. 59.
Earlier, I shared my fascination with Native Americans. That developed when I played cowboys and Indians. My buddies wanted to be cowboys. They had more guns. I liked the Indians and the Indian ways and was amazed to read about their walking through the woods without being heard. I even took to practicing walking quietly at home, trying not to make a sound. It didn't work, which only raised my interest in them, and that led me to their faith life and their faith-based practices. My search for more info on Indians is carried by the card catalog to the subcontinent of India. I found their books on Hindu myths and practices, which astounded me, so different from my nice little Midwestern Protestant ways. What a shift from the old-time religion. Dramatic. And then I met the Hindus, the Buddhists, Sikhs, and Taoists early in life. Later, I dug into the Masons, Theosophy, Rosicrucians, and later, astrology, numerology, tarot. By that time, what I valued most about the faith in which I was raised was very sweetly and simply the words of Jesus. Many years later, in 1992, I entered the Unitarian Church of Davenport, Iowa. And while there, as I looked at the plaque on the wall with our principles, I came to the second principle: to affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relationships. Justice, equity, compassion. This seemed to be an approach to righteousness I had been searching for through the course of my life. And it offered, just in those words, a hope for the future. Justice, equity, and compassion embedded in faith. This most holy faith, Unitarian Universalism. And then, of course, this faith's open canon is a luxury I could never have imagined. I was accustomed to congregations that kind of told you what to believe when you walked through the door, rather than saying, "Who are you? We're so glad you are here. Let's work together. Let's be companions on this journey." So I entered Unitarian Universalism there in 1992 with a mixture of Jesus and Lao Tzu. And during my time with you at Community Church, I added Don Miguel Ruiz, making a trinity. 3 prophets, lifting justice, lifting equity, lifting compassion, lifting righteousness. You know, there is a thing about in many of the more white faiths in this country, talking about justice and mercy. When one steps into the African American churches, it is justice and righteousness, which is one of the reasons why I feel so strongly it's important to pursue the efforts to address racism in our society. Righteousness. How can we really become equitable fully and completely? Now, Don Miguel Ruiz and Jesus and Lao Tzu are not the only prophets who shared a message. Others have different hues in different places and speak truth to people. But my search led me to those 3. 2 of them lived over 2,000 years ago. One was born in 1952. Foundational figures in my open book. And I must say here that sometimes I wonder what would happen if you seminarians were asked to take more courses in world religion. The face of our planet, dealing with the locations in which they have sprung up, have much that is worthy of sharing within them. Perhaps loving this world could involve getting to know it somewhat better by actually learning more about their faiths and what people do in other places. It is only from wisdom gained that any person of any hue can share. When I first met you, or first met CCUU in 2002, I came here with a hope inside that the you that you were then would allow me to minister to you from the slant on life I carried within me then in the sanctuary where you worshiped then. And you did. A team was formed, a partnership that held together through a hurricane of difficulties. You and I recognized the strengths of this congregation and blended them with the hues of your minister. And I'm most grateful for that, for all of that. And I'll return to this concept in a moment. I think now is our time for joys and concerns.
Now is our time, sacred time of joys and sorrows. If you are online, please write your joys and sorrows in the comments section to be read aloud. If you're in person, there are cards of joys and sorrows in our foyer. If you are not able to fill one out earlier, please feel free to do so during our musical interlude. And we thank you.
For our musical interlude today, we're going to be doing in 3-5-2, by the stillness, in 3-5-2.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a joy from Gordon and Josie, and they are happy to announce the birth of their granddaughter in Japan. Here's where I'm going to mess up on some of these names. Their son Brian, is that Yuko, the next name? And Josiah, okay, are very happy and doing well. Congratulations there. And we have, Liz has put in a joy for Diaz. What's that? It's on both sides. Okay. Well, we'll start with this side. Is that okay? All right. Because it's the one I'm looking at. Okay. Very grateful for the $300 donation. She has purchased most of the school supplies and a couple of uniform pieces. Still needs packs of paper towels, Kleenex, and disinfectant wipes, as well as additional uniforms, socks, and shoes. Fresh food is always welcome. Then on the other side it says, if you or anyone you know in the congregation has an illness, concern, or in need of assistance, please speak to Liz Trotter or send an email to caring@ccuunola.org. Confidentiality and trust are our values. That should be another joy for all of us. Jada de Clouet, I believe is how you pronounce that, is getting a root canal tomorrow, so keep her in your thoughts.
And we want to keep Cynthia Ramirez in our hearts and thoughts. She is away because her mother is in hospice, so she doesn't know quite when she will get back. She's taking care of her mother right now. We're thinking of you, Cynthia.
And there was another announcement I was given that this would go, I guess, under the sorrows and concerns, so I saved it till now. Sharon K. Kirsch Nazimowitz. I think that's close to pronunciation. I never knew her last name, really. Nazimowitz. Okay, thank you. I always called her Sharon. It worked easier. She passed away at her home on June 20th of this year. And we've got some data. She was born on December 18th, 1940, grew up and lived in Lakeview for most of her life, till she moved downtown after Katrina. She's loved by everyone who met her, as she was kind, caring, and always willing to help others. She taught piano to many in the New Orleans area, both children and adults. She's survived by her daughter, Nina. There was Brunel, her two grandchildren, Miles and Zoe Brunel, and her two sisters, Mary Lee Holiday and Charlene Negrato. Sharon will be incredibly missed by her family and friends. Her ashes have been spread in City Park under a beautiful oak tree. And Max was a visual artist. It was her husband. And he was noted for his sketches and paintings in New Orleans. He died unexpectedly. The funeral took place on July 1st at the Ansfard Cemetery. And said he was born in Austria but immigrated to the U.S. with his American mother when he was a small child. Survived by his daughter, Nina Nazimowitz of Carmichael, California. Okay, so just to let you know that they passed during a time when we weren't really having much in touch with each other. So we will now light two more candles, one for the joy still bubbling up, two new to share, and one for the sorrows that we cannot yet put into words. Know that we love you and hold you in our hearts.
I'd like to read the words to the hymn. First, just the first verse of the hymn, Gather the Spirit. Gather the Spirit, harvest the power. Our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion, and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Harvest the Power 3. When people enter into a relationship, it is good to approach it with an attitude of justice, equity, and compassion. Words drawn from our second principle. Amid this camaraderie, a spirit begins to shape up. Now, what do I mean by spirit? I turn to one of the 12 definitions of Merriam-Webster. A supernatural being or essence, a soul sense. Don Miguel Ruiz taps into the soul sense when he wrote, "When divine spirit became matter, it felt the ecstasy of God passing through it." And then he adds this, "When divine spirit is formless, it is that ecstasy passing through matter, giving it form." In my view, his reference here is to a sliver of holiness that resides in us all. Our Unitarian Universalist ancestors may not have gone along with Don Miguel Ruiz on his approach to things, but they did decide, I do believe, that that holy sliver is the inherent worth and dignity of every person, removing it from any divine language while still honoring its presence in life. I do not know if any of you have noticed it, but the principles and purposes in the first one acknowledge the existence and inherent worth of everybody, and then turn to a standard they affirm and promote. A standard one would think that represents our desire for ourselves. So here we must ask, how is our spirit vis-a-vis affirming and promoting justice, equity, and compassion in human relationships? Looking back, this congregation has had an ability to bounce back. After a ruination of 2005, you successfully rebuilt. Your spirit of interconnection carried you to 5 places of worship from 2005 to 2010, through which time your attention was directed toward building a new house of worship. It was the focus. As some here may recall, it was not just this new facility that was desired. It quickly turned to a new piano. Magically appeared. Then to outfitting this facility with solar panels. All accomplished because you crafted an attitude of abundance.
Amen.
We did not think in terms of a scarcity. We thought of what we had, and we pursued everything we desired. I can think of no better place for an attitude of abundance than this congregation right here, and I have been in quite a number of UU congregations. You achieved. This attitude of abundance has served you very, very well. But there is a counterpart to abundance, which I never shared as much as I might have while I served as your minister. One of its elements is equity. An attitude of abundance should feature its appreciation, particularly for those in your service. You have paid staff. This is where an attitude of appreciation, a component of the abundant attitude, should be found. Are you being fully fair? One asked. Delightfully fair in your compensation for your minister, your musician, religious education director, administrator. I ask these questions because all of this should be contained within that attitude of abundance. It is possible, you know, for an employee to feel if the pendulum swings away more from appreciation toward expectation. How have you ever felt when your boss said, we expect this and this and this, and then you look and see your compensation for the work that you are putting in? Today here in August of 22, you have successfully stepped through a ministerial search, and you have welcomed a new minister, the Reverend Stacy Mitchell. You have had guest ministers over the past few years, and I'm sure you have observed this, but each arrives with his, her, or their talents, vision, limitations, quirks, set of influences, view of life, etc. All different, just as we are as individuals, all different individuals, living our lives in the truth of our hue, the best we could do with what we were given. It is equally important to know that there are not enough ministers to fill the UU vacancies currently available. In a way, you are blessed beyond belief, I think, my friends, that Stacy Mitchell was available for you at this time, and here in New Orleans as well. You know, when I first came to New Orleans, one of the things your search team asked me was, do you think you'd be comfortable living in New Orleans? And all I had to answer was, I've been to Jazz Fest 3 times. I love it here. You know, so it is something about this locale, this city. Well, those of you who have traveled the country, there are no other cities like New Orleans. It's a place with potholes up to itself. So it is a unique place, let me say that. If your journey to this point takes a favorable turn, you are in a tremendous position to continue feeding your spirits here in this house of worship and harvesting a power that all of you here have, and a power that remains with you, but sometimes it needs the companionship, the fellowship of community, of relationship in order to be fully successful. And so, my friends, again, I thank you for this invitation to be with you today. And I want to close with the words from Edwin Markham. There is a destiny that makes us sisters and brothers. None goes their way alone. What we put into the lives of others comes back into our own. May your soul sense be a blessing to you and those around you. Namaste, Ashe, Shalom, Allah Hafiz, and Amen.
All right, for our closing hymn today, we have hymn 109.